God bless everybody. Today it is September 6th of 2023. I believe this is one of the most important studies that I've done. I'm going to break everything down that I've been showing you on one chart. You may not agree with these opinions, and it is speculation because all I am doing is analyzing the prophets and I'm trying to write down their information onto a chart so that you can understand it. Now, you may or may not agree with my findings. I'm still waiting for confirmation. I've told you many, many times that if these dates do not play out, that it's just wrong, and I'll be the first one to admit it. But as an analyst, it's my job, I guess in this case, to show you where I found the information, place it out on chart so that you can understand it, and make it simplified so that it's easy for everyone to understand where I came up with this paradigm. And I believe that I've done that in this chart that I'm going to show you. It's going to take you through a number of things. And I have made a few minor changes, and I've actually added some scripture to the chart, which I found new verses, which actually add more credibility to the verses that I've already given you. And so let's start in. I'm hoping to make this as short a video as possible, but there is a lot of content here. And I'm also hoping to answer all, if not most of your questions that I've received here lately about Ninth of Av and what might be coming up and why these Jewish dates matter so much. And what I found on the charts are, I believe, very profound. So let's dive into this, and I want to show you what I've found. And I believe that once we're done, you will be able to see it. You'll have a better understanding of what I'm presenting, and you will have possibly a timeline or roadmap to the end in the next 4 years or so. Today I'm at 1,487 days to the Feast of Trumpets of October 2nd of 2027, which I believe is the rapture day on the Feast of Trumpets of 2027. Now, you may disagree with that also, and you believe that we're going to be raptured prior to this, and that's fine. We may have a discrepancy on when we're all going to be taken away, but I believe the information still is pertinent to you, and you should see what's at least coming, even if you're not here. So let's dive into this. You can always go to my page. Now, I have not updated some of the videos down here, and I'm sorry because I'm so far behind on things. So I may try to go through and do that over time. But you can always go to my free Wix site at eschatology, at end of days, at end of days survival. And when you bring this up, you'll see these 5 PDFs. Now, I've added the paradigm chart to this last chart, and I modified this last chart from a text file to a PDF file so that you can literally see how all this is combined. I did the same thing on this for the statue and how all the 12 chapters of Daniel work together. So when you click on this, it's going to bring up a chart. I want to show you that chart now. So I've laid everything out on one chart, and I broke it down so that you can see what I'm talking about on these 3 past kings to present day leaders and how they could affect us as we move forward. And then I added the paradigm charts the paradigm chart and the parable of the fig tree chart together so that you can see how this came together, because I originally started out with the parable of the fig tree chart. Then when I found the paradigm chart, it added all these additional pieces in here, and just realized that I had been working on this, found the paradigm, and I've documented this in the videos, and then added these verses over time once this paradigm came clear to me. So let's look at this chart. I want to show you what's happening, and I've added much more content to this, and I believe this will break this down so it's much easier for you to understand. So let's dive into this chart. I'll explain how it works as we go. It's fairly easy to understand. I think once you see this, it will make much more sense, and it's all on one chart, and it's just easier to understand than the way I've been doing it. I've been wanting to lay it out like this for a while because even I found more connections as I've gone through this. Now I have added these dates and things to here, and I will go over those new dates, but the chart really hasn't changed. So it really hasn't changed at all. I did change in my last video. I had made a comment that I went from Gregorian to Hebrew calendar dates, and I'm still working to match up all those dates because I'm not real good with Jewish calendars, but very specific dates are occurring, and they matter in the time of the Jews, and they were all tragic. Sorry to say, but we will show you where those are in the chart. So let's go in here. We'll look at this chart. We'll start in this top corner here, and I want to show you what I've been talking about here. So when you come in here to the paradigm of the three modern day kings, this is a past to future prophecy, okay? I've been talking about this for a while. The three kings of the past reflect three kings of today. And that if you know who those kings are, that they reflect, and the time and that they've been in position were the same times that the old kings were in position, and that they actually will cross-reference and work in tandem together in the prophecies, not only in the past but in the future. I believe that this may be something that we should really be looking at. And I'm going to say this again. I do not know if there's any real truth to what I'm showing you other than I'm showing you the connections, and they will either play out or they won't. I'm an analyst. I'm just showing you what I found. You can make your own decisions on whether or not this matters. Some of the dates are very key, and so I do believe we need to look at them. And I believe that once you see this lining up of these kings to the old kings, you'll realize that there might be something going on here. So just realize that, okay? So let's look at this real quick. So I believe in my world, and I probably should have wrote these names down. I didn't do that. I probably should add that to the chart, but I'm not going to do it this very moment. Reuben Revlin, which is the past leader of Israel from 2014 to 2021, I believe represents Zedekiah in the Bible. So when you look at the times that they were in place, this leader or man has been in place at the same times, and you're going to see that as we play this out. Isaac Herzog, which is the newest leader of Israel, which came in at 2021, right after Reuben Revlin has his 7-year term. He is now the leader of Israel at this very moment. And it is not Netanyahu is not the leader, okay? He's a prime minister. He's not the leader of Israel. The actual leader of Israel is Isaac Herzog. And so we need to understand that, especially when you get into Enoch's prophecy of the 70 shepherds, that you need to look at the leaders of Israel, not the prime ministers. Now, he came in at 2001, and he's a new, or he's still there. So that's why I've got this question mark here. Okay. And I believe that the Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, is Nebuchadnezzar of the past, will be Nebuchadnezzar of the future, and he came in basically in 2002, and he's been basically a sitting president since. So I have these questions I wanted to ask you. Could three leaders or kings of the past represent three modern day leaders of today? Could three leaders of today reflect the time or years the three kings or leaders of the past were in power in the history of these kings up here? Has God shown us in the past history of the Jews what will come to them in the future? I believe that, as I've said many, many times, that he's shown us everything already. This prophecy has played out in the past. It will then play out again in the future. And so, yes, he has already shown us in the Bible everything that we should need to know. And there should be no questions left out there if we can find the right answers, because all the answers are in the Bible. At least that's my understanding. I don't think he left anything out. I'm pretty sure it's all in there if we can unlock it. Did God give us scripture through the prophets that tell us what is coming today in 2023? And today, literally as we're breathing today, is he showing us what's coming up in the future? Has God given us a map or timeline we can follow today that will show us what is coming in the future? And can we use these markers or timestamps to build a chart that will show us what is coming in the future? And I believe I've talked about this for a while. We are in the birth pains and sorrows right now, and I believe that this chart literally started when Erdogan invaded in October 9th of 2019, as you'll see on the chart. This was actually when the seals broke out originally, and we started to see the COVID come out in October of that year. And by the end of the year, we saw a global epidemic. And look what we've had happening since 2019 into 2023 as we move into 24. Terrible times on the ground, turbulence, and everything is falling apart. And so I believe as you walked into 2020 and the COVID hit, we started that chain of events, and now Erdogan is getting ready to invade Syria, as I've been talking about for some time. We'll see if that happens in the near future. So let me show you how this works, because it's actually fairly simple if you just look at it, okay? So I'm going to show you these examples. I think they're extremely important so that we can move forward and show you what Scripture is telling us and how this relates to these kings, okay? So each king has been in leadership for a certain duration or period of time, and I've shown you that over here. You've seen when they actually were brought in as leaders, and you've seen how long they've been in or are still in office, okay? So when we come over to these examples, this one is extremely important, okay? So in the third year of reign of Jehoiakim, and like I say, you got to look at these kings. So he's representing Jehoiakim, okay? As Reuben represents Zedekiah, and Erdogan represents Nebuchadnezzar. So you've got to remember these three players. It's important to the paradigm. So in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, which is Isaac Herzog, the king of Judah came, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. Okay, so the third year of this guy's reign would be 23, because he got in 21. So you got 2021, 2022, 2023. Okay, so this would be the third year of his reign. Okay, so we need to look at 23 if this paradigm matters. Let's go to this next example. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, because Reuben Reblem is Zedekiah, king of Judah. Now realize that both these men are the king of Judah or Israel. Okay, so when you're talking these two guys, one's a past king or leader, one's a present king or leader, but both these guys are going to matter as we move forward, as the paradigm tells us. Something will happen to this man, Isaac Herzog, and Reuben Reblem will have to step in, and I will explain that as we move forward. So let's look at this. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, the king of Judah, in the 10th month, came Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, in all his armies and against Jerusalem and besieged it. Well, that's really interesting, because in the 9th year of Zedekiah, which would be 23 for Reuben Revlin, because you go to 2014 to 2023, that is 9 years. We would see in that year of 23 Jerusalem besieged. So both of these kings are literally saying that the time that they've been in place, just as they were in past, they're in the place that they are today, they were in the past. This could happen. It could happen again. And the time that this king was in place, as we go through all these passages, line up with this king and this guy over here. Okay, so it's not just one, it's actually lining up with all three leaders. And that's why I call it the paradigm of the three modern day kings, because we're talking about three major kings or leaders of today that are being affected in this paradigm based on the scripture that I'm showing you. And Erdogan, I don't have one here for Erdogan right here, but you'll see him as we move forward. But let's look at this one here. So, and it came to the pass in the 9th year of the reign of the 10th month of the 10th day that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, and he and all his enemies against Jerusalem, and pitched it and built forts against and around about it. Okay, so look at that. In the 9th year of this guy's reign, guess what? That's 23 again. Now, when you go to the 10th month, and this is something extremely important, I had to convert. Now, I had been using Gregorian calendar dates on my charts, and I had questioned that practice because I truly believe this is a Jewish main event, and the Gentiles probably don't have a lot of control over anything that goes on here. We're just on the ground, and we've been given grace and, you know, salvation through his blood and all that. But we probably should be looking at the Jewish calendar or the Hebrew calendars, which are offset of our calendars, because they don't start on the January 1st. They start around the Feast of Trumpets, and that changes every year. So you have to look at when that actually occurs and how that changes our dates to their dates. And that's what I mean. I'm still working on those date exchanges as we move forward. So I'm hoping that, now I know certain dates are right, but I'm still looking at other dates to make sure that I can match them up. And if anybody with Jewish information could help me in this, and I seem to be wrong on some of these dates, please let me know what those dates are, because I do not want to be wrong and I would correct them. I'm still working on all this. This is a work in progress, so I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just saying that we have about, if you look at 23, there's about a 73-day period difference between our calendar and the Hebrew calendar, and you're going to see how that plays out as we move forward. So when you look at this date, the Hebrew date of October 10th of 23, okay, so October 10th of 23, because this is the 9th year of this man, would be December. The 10th month is December of 23. The 10th day is the 22nd. And so it would be December 22nd of 23. Now, that is an extremely important date, because on this date, the 10th of Tevet, now I did not know this, okay? I did not know when you convert. Somebody just asked me the other day and said, hey, why don't you convert this to Hebrew? And I said, I've been working on it. I'll get to it. Let's get it done. I've talked about this before. When I did it, something really interesting happened. So October 10th of 2023 turned into December 22nd of 23. This is extremely important because the 10th of Tevet were the time both the Babylonians and the Romans besieged Jerusalem on this very single date in history. So when you go to October 10th of 2023 and you Google the 10th month of the 10th year in the Jewish calendar of 23, it comes up with this date, and that ends up on this date. I'm saying that could we see potentially 3 sieges of Jerusalem on the very same date in history? One by the Babylonians in 589 to 587 BC. It would have started here. And then the Romans came in through Titus, because Nebuchadnezzar did the Babylonians. Then the Romans came in through Titus in 70 CE and besieged it again on this very same date, called the 10th of Tevet, which would be the same date as the Hebrew calendar tells us is going to happen in 23 on December 22nd of 23. And that's what I keep saying. I've been talking about that October 10th date for a while. And I thought it was there's no way Erdogan could accomplish this in the amount of time that he has based on my calendar. But if I move that forward with a Hebrew calendar, which would make much more sense, and it's not a Gregorian thing because it's a Jewish thing, I got to go to the Jewish side of this equation. It would add approximately 73 days to this, and it would take us to December 22nd of 23, which is amazing. That's right before Christmas. Okay. I'm just saying. So not only does it end up on a specific date, and 3 dates, as I'm going to show you in this paradigm, matter now. I've added to the chart. 3 extremely important days in the Jewish history, which I believe are going to reflect certain days that are going to come up as we move forward in the next 4 or so years. Okay, 4 years, if you didn't. So let's look at this last one here and realize that, look, multiple prophets were talking about this same siege. Here you got Daniel 1, Jeremiah 39 verse 1, Jeremiah 52 verse 4, and Ezekiel 24 verse 1 and 2, all saying the same thing, that all these, this city of Jerusalem will be besieged on a certain day, okay, on a certain time of a certain king, and that we can match these kings up in the past to the future kings. We might actually be able to see a map for them as we go forward here. So let's look at this next one here. Again, in the 9th year of the 10th month, the 10th day, the Lord said, guess what? Babylon is going to set its face against Jerusalem on this very day, okay? On this very day. Well, it's really interesting that he's talking about this very day, which is the 10th of Tevet, maybe. I'm just saying. And so that would be October 10th of 23. And so we need to watch that, because when you switch it to the Hebrew date, which I should switch that should actually say Hebrew, it's the Jewish date of December 22nd of 2023, we need to watch this date of 10 Tevet, which is possibly a siege by Erdogan, literally on the city of Jerusalem. Now, he's not going to break in those walls for up to 2 years, as you're going to see as we move forward. And he's going to be possibly decimated on the 6th seal, which is going to create that residue from 10 nations to 4 nations to 1 nation or 1 leader at the end, called the beast system. And you can see that in Daniel 7:24, when it says that 10 nations start, and then after them you get 4 nations, and one of them overthrows 3. And so when Erdogan is decimated with his 10 nations, when they attack Israel, they're decimated on the 6th seal. And you go look at that verbiage in the 6th seal. He's literally throwing surgical strikes down on these armies through stars from heaven as he's doing all these other things. And there's this massive global earthquake going on. When you get into that verse, you're going to see that we're talking about a 6th seal event, and it's the wrath of the Lamb, which is the 6th seal, not the wrath of God, which are the 7 bowls in Revelation 15:1. So if Erdogan's the first seal, he will be broken and die on the 6th seal. And if you go to Daniel 8, it says clearly that what? The goat's horn is broken, so Turkey or the Grecian Empire will be broken once Erdogan falls, or Iran falls, is added to those nations that go against Israel in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and then all 10 nations are destroyed, and a residue of 4 come up from that. There's a power grab, vacuum, and then what happens? Little horn overthrows 3 other nations, and it all becomes a beast kingdom after that. So hopefully you see what I'm talking about here, and how these 3 kings of today represent 3 kings of the past. As you move through each and every one of these verses, you're going to literally see that each and every one of these kings apply to a certain verse, and then we're going to add it to the charts, and you're going to see something really interesting happen at the end of this. It actually lays out between 2 charts I've been building. I combined them, and they work together without changing hardly anything, which is really unique. Anyway, we'll get to that in a moment. So let's go down and we'll look at, we've looked at these two sections here. Let's go over to this section. I want to show you where we are in the chart. That way you can see where we're heading. So let's go to this one here. Reuben Revlin is massive in this prophecy of the three modern day kings, because Isaac Herzog is captured at the very beginning of the siege, as you're going to see as we move forward. And then Reuben Revlin has to step in. Now realize that because Israel is under siege, there won't be the ability to run elections and stuff over here. So the past leader would come in, step in, and help Netanyahu and all the others control this government. And they're under siege anyway, so they're under attack. So the stress over there is going to be tremendous. So this guy is going to play a major role in what's coming up. And it tells us this by all these passages that we're going to be looking at. So in the 10th year, in the 10th month of the 12th month, the Lord came to him and said to Ezekiel, he said he's going to prophesy against the king of Egypt. Okay. So if we look at that, now this will affect Egypt. I've talked about this. They're going to come down from Turkey into Syria, into Lebanon. They're going to go around Israel, down into Gaza, and down into Egypt before they come back up. Okay, so Egypt matters in this. Okay, they're going to be a major player. And if you look at the 10 nations of Ezekiel, the nations that surround them are African nations called Put and Cush. So realize that's going on there. So in the 10th month, which would be October 12th day of the 10th year, that would be 2014 to 2024 on the, now I'm still checking these certain dates on the Hebrew. I know certain dates are right, but I'm also making sure and verifying other dates are right. So I want to make sure that these dates matter and match up, okay? And I'm still working on that, but I believe they're pretty close because there's about a 73-day gap. And that changes from year to year, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how it changes from year to year as we move forward. Okay, so when this happens, he's going to prophesy against the country of Egypt, and they're going to be decimated as we move forward. And I'm not going to go into all these verses because you're going to see this on the paradigm as we move forward here. Just realize that all these verses are attached to this king, and that when you have a judgment against a nation, I try to give you what that judgment is so that you can see what's happening and how that's playing out, and how Egypt's going to be affected by Put and Push, and or Put and Cush, and Ethiopia is going to be affected, and all this is going to happen down through these areas. And so you know, a sword will come against Egypt. It'll affect all these other areas. You can see how this is affecting, and this is really interesting. And I probably, you know what, let's just look at this because it's just going to be so much easier. So a sword shall come against Egypt. It'll affect Ethiopia. The slain shall fall in Egypt, and her foundations will be broken. And look at this. Ethiopia, Libya, and Lydia. Okay, now everybody wants to talk about a Russian thing. Well, Lydia is in Turkey. Okay, when Alexander came down into Turkey, that was actually Lydia. Okay, so he's showing you where this is. He's showing you that it's going to come down from Turkey into Africa, as Ezekiel, and I did in the last video. If you go through all the books of Ezekiel between 1 and 39, it actually lays out a path which ends up in Egypt from Tyre, Lebanon, of all places. So this is extremely important, and that he's going to give Erdogan the ability to basically take over this. And look at that. It's Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, which is affecting this guy and his country and Egypt right now. And that is Erdogan up here. And so I'm going to show you some more on Erdogan that really matters. And so Africa, Turkey, all these areas through Israel, Jerusalem are going to be affected as we move forward on this paradigm. Okay. So this one's a little bigger. Let's blow this out a little because you have to see the whole thing. Hopefully we can still read it here. Sorry, this is the best I can do with this format. So in Ezekiel 31, and I should add all these verses. I did not do that. I'm going to come back and correct some of this stuff. So 1 through 18, we see something extremely important happen. In the 11th year of the 3rd month of the 1st day, something happens to Egypt again. Okay? I'm not going to go through all these passages because the video is going to take too long. Just realize that when I go to the paradigm, I'm going to explain them again. Okay, so realize, so in this example, the 11th year is of Reuben Revlin is 25. Okay, and we're talking about the first day of the 3rd month, which would be March 1st of 25. So if you try to translate that into Hebrew, I believe, I may be wrong, I'm still looking into these dates, May 13th of 2025. Now these dates matter on the paradigm, so that's why I'm trying to verify them so hard to make sure that I'm not giving the wrong dates, because as we move forward, some of these dates really matter to us. Okay. So here we go again. We're talking about another. Now this is in 25. When you came up here, this was in 24. So Egypt's going to be affected throughout the time of the Seals War through Antichrist till the very end. Okay, just realize that. Egypt's a major player. Actually, Egypt rebels against Turkey over time because they're the king of the south, and they go against the king of the north even after Antichrist is on the ground. Now, so when you look at this and you realize that there's all these prophecies based on potential time that these modern day kings are in place, and that once I lay this stuff out on the paradigm, because I took all these dates and I laid them onto the charts as we move forward, but I want to show you how these date stamps on the verses matter to these kings and how many there are and how they reflect each and every one of these same 3 modern day kings as we would have seen them affect the kings in the past. So if you go to Jeremiah 52, 5 and 6, here's another really good example. In the 11th year of King Zedekiah, he comes in 2014, the 11th year would be 2025. In the 4th month of the 9th day, there was a famine that was so sore in the city, there was no bread for the people to leave because they're under siege. Okay, they're going to be under siege for almost 2 years, from 23 to 25. Okay, this is early 25, so they're probably still under siege. And right after this, something happens in May on the Gregorian calendar that will move us forward. So, which I've converted to Hebrew. So this would then be June 21st of 2025 if my estimates are right. Now I know 3 dates are very specific and I know they're right, but I'm still trying to line up all these other dates because, like I say, each year the Jewish calendar starts on the Feast of Trumpets, and then you have to work based on, you know, the 11th year of this month, of this day, of this king. I have to know when that Jewish calendar happens and how you move it forward into this king of today, not these kings of the past, and how that works with the Hebrew calendar, not the Gregorian calendar. I know the Gregorian date. I need to know for sure that I'm verifying the Hebrew date. So here again, on this day, we're watching this famine, and this is in 25, so the siege starts in 23. Okay, so let's look at this one. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, the king of Judah, even names him, in the 10th month came Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and his army is against Jerusalem and besieged it. Okay, well, wow, we saw that up here on a number of these, didn't we? Well, he's showing you again in Ezekiel 30, verse 1 to 7, that this is going to happen on this very specific date of December 22nd of 23. So we have a matchup here, okay, with this verse here. I lost my verse. This verse here. Sorry about that. So that's what I mean. Each of the prophets were talking about the same things on the ground. They knew the kings. They knew when they were in. And all these prophets were basically, maybe not on the ground at the exact same time, but they were in pretty much the same time frame. And they were working together on all these things. Or they were feeding off the old prophets to the new prophets, which gave them the information they needed to know to move forward. So here we go again. We got a potential siege of Israel on December 22nd of 2023. Wow, that's really crazy, man. So let's look at this one. And this goes to that siege that I was talking about, okay, for almost 2 years. And if you actually look in the history book, it was about 18 months or so. At least that's what it states in the history book. I believe I'm going to show you that as we move forward. So in the 11th year of Zedekiah, Reuben, Reblon, 4th month, 9th day, the city was broken up. Wow, it was broken up. And the king of Babylon came in, and all these leaders had a parley. And what happened? Zedekiah the king saw them. He fled to the plains of Jericho. He was captured. His sons were taken captive with him, and all the people were there, and his eyes were taken out, and he was carried, and Zedekiah's eyes were removed, and he was taken to Babylon. Now, look, I don't want to see anything happen to a modern day leader or king. But if it's happened in the past, it's going to play out in the future, then this could be this guy's fate. Okay, I'm just saying this is what happened in the past. It's probably going to happen to this guy in the future. And if you look at Enoch's prophecy of the 70 shepherds, he indicates that all 12 leaders, or actually all 70 leaders, but all last 12 leaders of Israel since May 14th of 1948 would actually be determined to go to hell, because none of them were very good leaders, and they didn't do what was required of them to bring their people back to God and to the Son Jesus. That's his words, not mine. Okay, so we're having these massive prophecies with these kings. So let's keep moving forward, and I want to show you some more of these. Okay, so we've gone through these up here. We've gone through these here. Yep, that's the 11th day. That's and that's what I mean. So same thing up here, you know, you have this besieging 2 years later, okay, in 25. Well, down here you have another indication of a besieging for up to 2 years. If you go to the history books, it's about 18 months, okay? So let's go to this one here, and we'll show you this one. In the 11th year of Zedekiah, now this is Jeremiah 39, 2 and through 9, okay? And I will make these changes when I add I'll recorrect the changes that I've seen out here and add them to the charts. Just some minor corrections. So in the 11th year, in the 4th month of the 9th day, the city was broken up. Well, okay, so that is June 21st of 25, because the 11th year of this king, Reuben Reblon, would be 25. The Gregorian calendar date is the 4th month, 9th day, so that's April 9th of 25, so that would be on the Hebrew calendar, if my dates are right, June 21st of 2025. Okay, when you get into here, it tells you that this king was carried away. Okay, his eyes were taken out, just as it said down here. Okay, it took his eyes. Then on the 12th year of Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard was carried away, and the Jews, and he shows you that 46 or 4,600 people were taken away. Okay, well, if you look at the 3 and 20th year of Nebuchadnezzar, that would be the 25. Okay, and that's what we're talking about. All these 25 dates are popping up on all three of these guys. 25 is a major year. Between 24 and 25, 24 the Antichrist rises, and then we see him into major power in 25. Okay, Erdogan will be killed on the sixth seal. He'd be resurrected into the Antichrist on the sixth trumpet, right after the pit opens on the fifth trumpet. Okay, and that's right after the seals war. And if you go to Revelation 8, 1 and 2, it clearly says what? The seventh seal is broken, and half an hour of silence happens, and then he hands out 7 trumpets. You have to know there's a procession of events. So if some guy out there is taking seals and moving it over to trumpets and bowls, then you need to bring him back to Revelation 8, 1 and 2 and look at that literally. And it clearly says that 7 seals are broken first, half an hour of silence occurs, and then we have the 7 trumpets. And I've also done a study in my 3 woes, 3 trumps about that, and how that affects the progression and chronological order of Revelation itself. So this last verse on the bottom, it just sort of adds to the content of what I've been talking about and how all these verses work together, but they reflect the kings of today based on what the kings in the past were in position, and that we could potentially see this play out in the future just as it did in the past. So the captain of the guard breaks down the walls of Jerusalem, and then he carries off these captives to the king of Babylon. Okay, so just realize that all these verses are saying basically the same thing. They're leading us to a potential future prophecy which we can unlock, I believe. We'll see how that goes forward. So when we get to this next set, this gets really interesting, okay? I want to show you some things here that most people aren't showing you. So hopefully you're gaining some content out of this, and this isn't wasting your time. Believe me, when I get to the charts, I believe you are going to see a clear picture of what I'm talking about here. So please work with me, let me finish this video, and let me get through all the rest of these verses, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in the charts. This is extremely important. I've been talking about this for a while also. So now it came to pass in the 7th month that the son of Nathaniel, I don't know how to say this, but what I do know is this: it reflects this name almost exactly, which is, I call a Nostradamus effect. So if you look at Netanyahu and you look at his name and line it up with this name, there's only a couple minor differences in these two names. If you remove the H, okay, if you change the I to a Y, and you remove the U on the end, these names are exactly the same. Now, this is extremely important in my paradigm because I believe at least one of these sons, I believe Abner in this case, will be a major factor in what is coming up in end times prophecy. And he's actually literally indicated in the Bible that the son of this man would affect a leader or governor that the Antichrist puts in place when both kings of Israel are taken out of commission and in captivity. So this is extremely important because Netanyahu, I wanted to see if he was going to get reelected. And he does have 2 sons, and one of them is a military figure that probably has some clout. I don't know anything about this man. I'm guessing since he's not Netanyahu's kid, he's probably got some clout in the military. Correct me if I'm wrong. He also has another son called Yar, which is more of a scholastic figure. He may or may not play a role. There is a potential fast that occurs at the end, and that could be this guy and not this guy. And so I don't know which son, when we're talking about the son of Netanyahu, it might be, because it doesn't give us that much information. But he does have 2 sons. And one of the events that is coming up will actually be a destruction of a governor that Antichrist puts in place. This would then be the 12th leader of Israel, because the other two leaders are out of commission, being captured. Reuben Revlin is had his captured, had his son killed, his eyes removed. Isaac Herzog is captured during the siege, the original siege of Jerusalem. And so Antichrist, once Reuben Revlin is captured in 25, he would then place a leader in, which this man, I believe, will kill, okay, based on scripture. So in Kings, 2 Kings 25, 23 to 25, and one chronological, I'm destroying words today, sorry guys, 2:34 to 41, shows a possible attachment to the son of Netanyahu, or part of the leadership structure at the end, just got to change that, just prior to the abomination of desolation, okay? And I'm going to show you on the chart. But what's this is telling us is that as you go down here, that these two leaders are going to be captured, as I've explained. The son of Netanyahu will bring 10 men against this governor that the Antichrist places in. He smotes and kills him. And that would then end the 12th season of the 12th leader. Enoch says when that season's over, this completes pretty much the story. And so that matters. And so once this leader dies, no one else is placed into place. And as we get into this area, we're starting to talk about abomination and the temple being destroyed and the whole city crashing down. And so there's just no point in this being brought forward. And then if you come down here, this prophecy is about Isaac Herzog. So here we have another link to a different guy than Reuben Revlin. So in the 5th year of Jehoiakim, the son of king of Judah, in the 9th month, we saw them proclaim a fast. Now I don't have a day, so I'm just picking the 9th month, which is in the Gregorian calendar is September. In the Hebrew calendar, it ends up being November, December. So in December, November of 26, based on this guy being in position in his 5th year from 21 to 26, that would then also give you a correlation between all these kings with Isaac Herzog, that this would happen and that we would see this fast proclaimed before Jerusalem, and right after that we see the cities decimated, okay, on my chart. So we're getting into 27. A lot is happening. Antichrist and abomination and all kinds of things are getting ready to happen shortly after this. So let's look at these last few. In this case, in Ezekiel 33, 21 to 33, the 12th year of our captivity. That's really interesting the way he states that, because they are in captivity because the city is under siege and a lot of these people are taken away. The 10th month of the 5th day of the month. So the 12th year of this guy's reign would be 26, Reuben Revlin. That would be the 5th of October on the Gregorian calendar. I believe the Hebrew calendar date is December 17th. There you go again. We're talking about a potential holiday of Christmas coming up, and that we would see that this is going to get really interesting. As you see that the city is Jerusalem is being smitten, okay, and that's what I'm just talking about up here. They're breaking. There's no food left. They've been sieged for almost 2 years. They're fasting and hoping that God will protect them and praying to Him, and then all of a sudden in this month here, we see the city basically smitten and destroyed. Okay, because God's getting ready to rebuild the whole planet here soon. So it's interesting how all these kings work. Let's walk through the last couple real quick, and I'll show you, and then we'll go to the charts. I want to add a few other things here. So here's another one. So this was Ezekiel 33, 21 to 33. This is Ezekiel 32, 1 to 16. In the 12th year, 12th month, first day, word came to him. There was a lamentation against Egypt. So now we're having actual judgment against Egypt. That would be the 12th year of this king, Reuben Revlin. That would be in 26. The Gregorian calendar date is December 1st of 26. The Hebrew date would be February 12th of 27. Okay, so now we're having a lamentation against Egypt. And then here, another one, in Ezekiel 32, 17 to 32, in the 12th year of Reuben Revlin, in the 15th day of that month, 12th year, 15th day of the month, and that's right after this event here. As you can see, it's right after verses. We're going to see this would be in 26, in December 15th, because it's the 15th day of the 12th year. We had this date here, and so this happens right after this. That would be February 26th on the 2027. Egypt is cast down, and there's massive judgment against Egypt and the leader and the king of Egypt. When you come down into this part, this is extremely important. I want to reiterate this. This is extremely important. This is so profound, I believe, that it could happen in the past exactly as how it's going to happen in the future on very specific dates. 3 of the worst possible dates in the Jewish history, and the guy asked me about this on one of the questions when he thought the 9th of Av was going to matter, and I believe I'm going to show you that here. So in the time of the past, both the Babylonians and the Romans in history sieged Jerusalem on the very same day. And so my question is, could we see the third siege of Jerusalem basically occur on this very certain day, which would be December 22nd of 23? And so all 3 sieges on Jerusalem that occur in time of history would happen on the 10th of Tevet. Okay. On the 17th of Tammuz, this is interesting because this is when they breached the walls of Jerusalem. And in the time of history, on the 17th of this day, the 17th of Tammuz, both times in the past, the walls of Jerusalem have been broken into. Okay, both the Babylonians and the Romans. Okay, so realize these are extremely important. So the question then is, could this day be the 3rd time the walls of Jerusalem are broken into, which would be July 15th of 2025. Remember, the walls and Jerusalem is sieged for almost 2 years or 18 months. Wow, look at the timing on that. That's incredible. And the last date that you need to watch is the 9th of Av, because that is actually the temple itself is destroyed, and that would be in August 11th of 27, because we're talking about around abomination, right after abomination, and how we would then see the Lord smitten the temple right before he rebuilds the earth and makes a new kingdom. He will destroy that. The 2 witnesses of Paris, the abominations happen. The temple will be destroyed. The 3rd temple will be basically broken. And so it would show, and as you see these dates on the calendars, I'm getting ready to show you the timelines. I think they match up perfectly with the timelines. And I just added this stuff. If you've been following me, you haven't seen these dates on the timelines. I'm just finding this stuff and adding them to them. So you need to understand I'm constantly working on this stuff. But realize something extremely important. That's a train going by. So let me hold for just a second. He'll be done. So when you go to these 3 dates, what I'm saying is, could these 3 dates possibly matter in the future as they have in the past? The siege on Jerusalem, the same day, both times the city have been sieged in the past, will happen in the future. Same thing with the walls actually falling, and they actually break into the city, and then the destruction of the temple itself. All could happen on the very same day in time of history, 3 times in a row on all 3 events. that just seems really insane to me, but I believe that is what's possibly going to happen. So could we see on this event here on the 9th of Av on August 11th of 2027 the possible third temple destruction date? And this would be right after Abomination, as I'm getting ready to show you here. So now we're getting to the meat of this project, and that is to these charts and how this all lays out on this chart at the end. Okay, I'm going to show you this chart because it adds all the dates that I've been giving you in this informational video on this chart with the original chart that I've been building called the parable of the fig tree. Now, you need to understand this chart first, and then we can overlay the other chart. And you see that I didn't change anything. Now, I did this in time, and I've done documentation on this as I built these things over the last 6 or so years. So it's in videos, and you can see that procession as I work through that. I'm not removing any of my videos. I've just been leaving them. My narrative is basically the same in the last 6 years. It hasn't really changed any. I just added a lot of content to it. So we need to understand a couple things. I took 4 dates on this chart and used them based on Daniel 8 and 12. And then I added the 1260 days, and I'll show you why. So 1260 days, 1290 days, 1335 days, and 2300 days matter to understanding what is coming in the future. The reason this is because Daniel 8 verse 13 tells us that we need to understand how long the vision concerning the future is, and that he gives us very specific things that we need to look at to understand what he's talking about here. So he's talking about it's concerning the continual burnt offerings, and we're going to go into that in this next one here. Okay, see that? Continual burnt offerings, continual burnt offerings. The transgression that makes desolate, so that's abomination of desolation. The giving over the sanctuary, okay, so the sanctuary is being trampled underfoot. How long will this all take place? And so I took it from the time we are tabernacling with God, which is on the 17th of October, because this is when we are actually in the fall feast here. And that we would be tabernacling with God. This would end the fall feast. He completes the fall feast. That should complete the story, as the Jews have been saying. He completed the spring feast when he first got here and was resurrected and risen. He'll complete the fall feast when he comes back. That is a Jewish thing, not mine. And I believe that is the case also, because it seems to really make sense on the chart. So I went from the 17th of October 27, because the strong generation, which I'm going to go over in a second, all things will happen before the strong generation, or the 80th year, or that 80th year of the Jews. So the nation was born between May 14th of 1948, and the strong generation, or the 80th year, would be in May 14th of 28. All things would happen prior to that. So you would have to look back to the fall feast prior to the strong generation completion, and I'll show you that verse in just a second, so that it wraps that portion up. So if you take the October 17th of 2027, which would end the fall feast, work that back 2300 days, that would be June 30th of 21. Okay, so that's how I got that date. Now the 1260 days, as I'm going to show you on this text chart up here, what that is basically the time between the signing of the treaty and abomination, as he tells us, which is tribulation. Now I'm going to give you 3 other demarcations here: the sorrows and the birth pains, tribulation, and great tribulation, as we move forward also on this chart. He gives you a date of 1290 days, and then one of 1335 days, and I want to explain those real quick. So if you go into Daniel 12 verse 11 and 13, he says, from the time the continual burnt offerings are taken away, so these continual burnt offerings are being taken away. And then look, he gives you a procession here. Continual burnt offerings are taken away, transgression or abomination happens, and the Gentiles are trampling. Okay, so the continual burnt offerings are taken away here. Then the abomination that makes desolate is set up. So this happens prior to this, and I'm going to show you why. There shall be 1,290 days, so 1,290 days. And bless who waits and comes for the 1,335 days, but go your way until the end, and you shall rest and still stand in the allotted place at the end of the day. So why does he give us 1,290 and 1,335 days? And why do I believe a lot of people get this wrong? Because the continual burnt offerings, they always put down here, okay, around abomination. But if you actually look at it, if you take the abomination and work it back 1,290 days, it would be 30 days prior to the signing of the treaty. Then you would get the treaty signing and then 1,260 days to abomination. And it sort of follows what he's telling you. You get these continual burnt offerings stopping, they're removed. Then you get abomination over time. And in that period of time, there's 1,290 days, okay, to abomination, okay? So if it's to abomination, then you make that go back to 190 days. That would be 30, and that's an interesting point. So 30 days prior to the signing of the treaty, we would see him, Antichrist, proclaim that the continual burnt offerings have to be stopped. And they only proclaim then to exalt him as we move forward into the beast kingdom. Okay, so if you see this happens, you know that 30 days later on this very specific date of April 20th, I want to blow this up real quick, of April 20th of 2024 would be that date of 1,260 days to abomination, which is amazing that this is actually Hitler's birthday. So on Hitler's birthday, based on my charting, we would see a treaty between nations against Israel, and a pack of nations sign a 7-year potential treaty as we move forward, which would take you into tribulation, okay, on Hitler's birthday of all things, okay. I think that's extremely important, and I think it matters to the charting, okay. So now the 1,335 days matters because if you go from, and this to me matters, and this is why I think a lot of people get this wrong. So he talks about this 1,335 days and that all things will basically complete, okay, right after that. So what I've done is if he selects the 144,000 and we start into tribulation of the 1,260 days, then we would take that 75 days after that, because he, remember, and no one talks about this, he shortens the second half or the elect would not survive, okay? And right after abomination, which I don't have on this chart, I have on the other chart, the two witnesses perish right after this, okay, and lay in the street for 3.5 days, and then they rise. So he's letting you know that he has to shorten the second half for a reason. So now you know where the 4 dates come in. This is from Daniel 8, the 2,300 days. It's from the time the sanctuary of God to back in past. And so that would take us to June 30th of 2021. And so that's your 2,300 days. So when you come up here, I've got this on a number of charts. I talk about the parable of the fig tree, how if you look at this, the years of our life are 70, so that'd be 70 years, because a score is 20 years, so that'd be 70 years. A normal generation is 70 years, but a strong generation is 80 or 80, and then that span of toil or trouble, and then they would soon fly away. And it's talking about that last generation of Israel between May 14th of 1948 and May 14th of 2028. The 70th year would be in 2018. A strong generation would be 2028. And so that matters to the ending of the chart, because this is the strong generational end here. And then you would go back to the Feast of Trumpets in the fall of 27, which would give you these 4 sets of dates, which would take you back. Another thing I want to explain real quick is there are 3 dates that I don't think most people get. You have the sorrows and birth pains, which is the time when basically I believe Erdogan broke out in October. 2, tribulation, or the start of tribulation, when the signing of the treaty actually occurs, and we would start in the 1260 days of tribulation. And then when abomination occurs, we go into great tribulation. So that you would see these on my charts, and I've given you verses which sort of explain this. You need to look at these things. And then I've also talked about how 1,000 years of ours is to one of God. And so if you use a 360-day prophetic calendar, you would then be able to break down God's time. And so when we get to an hour of God's time, it's about 15 days of ours based on 1,000 days of our time to 1 day of his. And so the bull phase is actually a fairly quick phase. It would only be 15 days, and that would then complete your 2,300 days, and that would be right after the rapture of not only the 2 witnesses, but then you would see the rapture of, I believe, the church. You may not agree with that. You may believe that happens back here someday in your pre-rapture. I'm pre-wrath, or right before the bowls. So my rapture in my chart, or my understanding, is on probably the Feast of Trumpets. And everybody wants to complain about my dates and stuff, and that's fine. I don't know whether these dates will play out. If God does it as he always says he's going to, and he's going to fulfill the fall feast when he comes back, then, and Jesus is going to fulfill this fall feast, then we would have to look at these very specific date. We don't know the very time or the day that Lord would come back, because it's a 2-day festival. I speculate, and I speculate. I'm just saying this. On the October 2nd of 27, you have a sabbatical Saturday, which is the day, one of 2 days the East Gate can be opened, and the sanctuary of God can actually be entered, and that is on a sabbatical Saturday or a new moon. Okay, and so I'm just saying this lines up with a sabbatical Saturday. And so on this Feast of Trumpets is when I truly believe, after the elect are removed, it's amazing, the elect are removed, we are taken with them if we are a saint or martyr or an elect. As you know, I believe there's a secondary rapture for everyone else when the white throne judgment happens. This is only for very select people through abomination, because it tells you the elect came through great tribulation. Okay, so you need to look at that. It's only for very specific people. I believe those people will be placed there for the millennial to be taught as our teacher and leaders as we move into the eternity. So as we look at this next chart, so this is the chart I've started out with. I've had this chart for a long time. But when I found the dates to all those other dates that we've just been talking about in the paradigm, and you add them to this chart here, look at how this changes. Okay, now, like I said, I haven't changed this chart down here. Okay, I've had this chart forever. It's been talking about this for years. But the parable or paradigm fit right into this chart. Okay, I did not have to change anything. All the dates that I've given you on this chart are on this chart down here now. Okay, and I've added it to this parable of the fig tree chart. So all I've done is take this chart, and I've added these dates, sorted them based on the date, as you know, in chronological order as we move into time, into the future, added them to this, and I did not have to modify this chart at all. It just fit. And that sort of scared me a little bit, because what were the odds that these dates here would fit in this chart I'd already been working? So when I did, it ended up doing this. So if you move down to the bottom right corner of my chart, you're going to see this chart here. And like I say, this chart up here is the same chart, only I've added those dates that we've talked about in the paradigm about the 3 modern day kings into this chart here. Okay, so I'm just showing you what I found, and I'm just being an analytical thinker and showing you how all these things come together. Whether or not there's anything to this or not, we're going to find out soon, because some of these dates are going to hit, and then I'm either going to be wrong or right. We'll see. But then I found 3 other dates in here that I've added that I think matter tremendously to this chart here. Okay, so just realize as we walk through this last chart, this is really where the meat of this discussion matters. So let's go into the chart, and I'll show you why this really seemed to line up perfectly. And you may agree or disagree with me. We'll see what happens here. So let's blow this up, and I'll show you what's going on here on this timeline, just so you can see. I want you to really be able to look at this whole chart. So let me get this positioned properly. There we go. Okay, so I believe Erdogan broke out on October 9th of 2019. We started to see the reports of COVID come out shortly after that. We had the shofar blast on the Temple Mount, which was a warning. I believe I made a video about this, that the king of the north would be sent against them. I actually made 3 videos about this, and how Isaiah, or how this was probably not a good idea, because I believe that the shofars should be blown in the temple. There is no temple at this moment, and even if they do blow them, they should only blow them in the confines of their homes. They can't just take them out in the streets or just blow them nilly-willy. That's a very important tradition on how they use these shofars, and even the older rabbis were warning the Jewish people not to do it in these circumstances under the way they were doing it. And so when you get into this chart, you'll start to realize that then we start walking into these 2300 days. Okay, wow, right after that we just had this warning to Israel. The 2300 days start to pop. Okay, now I wrote a bunch of stuff in here. I think it's extremely important that we go through these dates real quick, and you can see as we move through here what I'm talking about. Okay, on September 7th of 21, we started the sabbatical year. It was start of the 7th year of the Shemitah, and in the next year we would potentially see, in the past, a destruction of the temple, which would potentially be a calamity against Israel as we move forward in the next year or two. And so I thought this was extremely important. The Shemitah always matters, usually after a cycle or shortly within the next year or two. We have a destructionary mode. We're moving into 23, so that makes sense. This date here is September 22nd of the fall equinox. On September 25th of 2022, I'm just adding these dates because I think it builds up into where we're moving. This is the Feast of Trumpets. It begins. We have the end of the 7th year of the Shemitah, or sabbatical year. In between the Feast of Trumpets here, Rosh Hashanah ends and Feast of Trumpets ends. Then what do we have? We have these dates. Now, I've talked about that's January 3rd to 24th dates. Now, I didn't get too deep into them now because I don't know if there's any real relevance, other than I believe this was the start of a real breakout against Israel and disturbances. And look, in March, there was a major ramping up. And I've taken those January 3rd and 24th dates from Daniel 10 that I've talked about so many times, and I moved them to Hebrew dates. Okay, so that's all I did, and it was basically on the first day of the month, the 20 or first month of the 24th day of this king. Same thing. Well, it ends up being in March. Okay, so I did change that because I think we have to follow the Hebrew calendar dates in this and not the Gregorian calendar dates. When you get into April 8th, Daniel, he can't sleep for those 21 days. So I haven't looked at this, but there may be a major event that happened between March 17th, which is actually my wife's birthday of all things. And if you're concerned about my wife, we are having a biopsy on her cancer tomorrow. So hopefully we'll determine just what is going on there and we can figure out some treatment on that. But on her birthday, of all things, I just noticed that we would see he would have a vision of a war. We would see him not sleep for 3 weeks. I actually got to redo that. The spelling's wrong. Sleep for 3 weeks. I've just corrected all this stuff. Sorry, guys. And then we would watch potentially in a war against Iran happening, okay? And that Daniel 8:38, Ezekiel 38:39 war, which is the seals war, the first 6 seals, which is coming up. And I believe that they'll correspond together at the same time because Persia is the first nation, including the 2 African nations that are listed in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Iran would be one of them, so they would be absorbed into this. And so Daniel 8 would actually happen prior to the siege, the actual maybe not the siege, but the actual break-in of the walls and the decimation that would occur on the 6th seal, which is coming up over here, okay, on potentially January. Okay, so we look at this and go, okay, so Daniel's having this vision. He's really distraught. We're getting into April. We're moving into this calamity with Israel. Right now, we're getting ready to break out into a war at any moment. Now, this is my little thing. I had an image. I believe it was an Ottoman thing that told me Solomon Shah mattered and that possibly Erdogan would be crowned here. So that's just me. I put that in there because I believe that shows it will be an Ottoman thing and he will be given a crown as we move forward into Daniel 8 and Ezekiel 38 and 39. I've got another train. So now we start into the dates, okay? All this before is just a lead up into this paradigm of the 3 modern day kings and how, as we walk into December 22nd of 23, we would see a potential besieging on Jerusalem. Now, this was an October 10th date. I moved it to Hebrew, okay? So realize I have changed these because I believe it's the Hebrew dates that matter. The thing is, this is really interesting because when I changed that date from the 10th month of the 10th day of 23, it ends up being the 10th of Tevet, which is the day that Israel was besieged 2 times in the past. Now, I don't know how that could line up. I'm just saying, and if you actually go out and look at the 9th or the 10th of Tevet, it doesn't land on December 22nd every year. It changes every year. So it only does that occasionally. So if you look at the old 10th of Tevet dates, you'll realize that very few of them fall on December 22nd. There was one this year. If you go into the past, we had one in 2004. If you go into the future, I think it's like 2034. You would actually see another one. So the question is, yeah, 2034. So it was unique to see that this date fell this year on a very specific date in time, which was December 22nd, which I did not know at the time when October 10th of 23 was a Gregorian calendar date. When I moved it to the 10th month of the 10th day of this year, that it would actually end up on this date. I don't know what the odds of that are. It just seems incredible that this would line up like this. So we would potentially see a besieging the 3rd time on this very specific date of December 22nd of 23. Then the paradigm would then jump over here, but I wanted to show you a couple other things real quick here on this so you understand what's coming up. So if this is the case, and we would see a sieging on Jerusalem, and Erdogan would give 10 nations the power for 1 hour. Now, I don't know if this is exactly how this would play out, but I'm just saying, if you take 1 hour of God's time to ours, that's 15 days. So 15 days from December 22nd on the siege of Jerusalem, we would see potentially a sixth seal event occur, and all these nations would die that are attacking Israel. And then you would go into Ezekiel, where it talks about the 7-month burials, because this is a flesh thing, not a Revelation 20 thing, because those are immortal bodies. They have to be consumed. When they perish in Revelation 20, they're consumed by God's hand by fire. They're not buried in a dirt grave. So if you think they're both the same word, look at the terminology. He does not bury those people. They're not flesh anymore. They're in the millennial. So they're consumed by God's hand by fire, and they never have the second death because they never are judged and placed in the lake of fire. So there's a reason for that terminology there. We also see that they're burning the weapons for 7 years, alluding to an upcoming tribulation period, okay? And that the seventh seal is now broken, a half an hour of silence. We see the selection of 144,000. And look at that, the four winds are being held back in Revelation 7:1 and being released on the sixth trumpet when Antichrist and the false prophet rise. Now, look at this. From this time that we're in the seals war, a quarter of the world is being decimated by war. When you get into the trumpets, the first four trumpets decimate the communist areas of a third of the planet. At least in my opinion, they'll destroy the communist areas. So if you go out on a map, that's a fairly large area of destruction, which would make sense because when you look at the sixth seal, the skull rolls back in heaven, the skies change, stars are falling from the skies, pummeling the armies of Gog, and the moon and the sun turn blood red because they're being shaded by the soot and all the stuff that's going off, because you're having a global earthquake event all at the same time that these nations are getting pummeled on the ground. And that's what I mean. We haven't even got to Antichrist yet, okay? And if you're here and you think you're not raptured yet, and you're getting ready to walk into this event, which may or may not happen, then maybe you ought to prepare a little more. I'm just saying, I don't think there's a free ticket here. In my world, I don't believe there is. And that you will have to wait till the seventh trumpet and the Lord comes back, which only makes sense because he comes after Antichrist, right? Which is on the sixth trumpet. I would think he's not the first seal. Look, if you're saying that the Antichrist, the Lord Jesus, or a history lesson is the first seal, I think you got it wrong. And I've been talking about this for a while. It's neither of those. It's actually Gog of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And he will come forth against Israel based on this charting. And he will decimate this country. They are going under judgment, as the false teachers and the foolish prophets are telling you that it's all going to be gorgeous over there somehow. I don't get it, but hey, whatever. That's not what he says. So when the sixth trumpet goes off and the bottomless pit opens up right before that, you see Antichrist and the false prophet rise. The four winds are released on this date. And all these things have verses. Look, all these things have verses. And I've adjusted these verses with the additional verses that I found. So I've actually added content to this. Like here's Daniel 1, which I'd never had here before. But I found these and I've added them to them. So it even adds more credibility to, I think, the paradigm. So when we get into the continual burnt offering stopping, and look at that, right before that, you have March 20th, you have the start of the fall equinox, or spring equinox. It's amazing that when he comes back, he'll emulate somewhat Jesus. And you're opening up the spring equinox, the life cycle, okay? I'm just saying, I don't know how this stuff can line up like this. Then on March 21st, he would stop the continual burnt offerings because he would be resurrected already from this destruction back in January and December. He would be resurrected already because there's 7 months of burial. He'll come out of this hole. They'll still probably be burying people and cleaning this mess up from this 10-nation destruction. And in April 20th, based on my charting, we would see a potential signing of a treaty on April 20th of 2024, which is actually Hitler's birthday of all things. So it's just interesting timing. Hitler's birthday lines up with the 1260 days on my chart that would end up at abomination. And then you would have that 75 days shortened chart or shortened time, which ends up exactly on the Feast of Trumpets. I just, I don't know. Um, I'm just showing you what I found. You guys have to make a decision on whether this matters or not. So on Hitler's birthday, we would see a potential signing of a treaty. And then 30 days prior to that, he would stop the continual burnt offerings because he's been brought back as a dead Gog into an Antichrist figure through a resurrectional thing. I go to Isaiah 14. I've talked about this many times. Satan is thrown down on the fifth trumpet. He rises up Antichrist and the false prophet on the sixth trumpet, and then the Lord would come back on the seventh trumpet. As you get into these other dates, this next set starts back into the paradigm dates that I had talked about and have been talking about for some time. And so let's go over these real quick and we'll end this video because it's starting to get pretty long. I get it, but there's a lot of content here. So these are the dates that I've shown you in this chart. December 24th of 24th of 24, March 21st of 25, and so forth. All these dates matter to this block in between the signing of the treaty and abomination, and I did not manipulate this chart. It just fit. Okay, and then there's an extremely important date here and here that matter. So on December 24th of 24, Egypt is devastated by plagues, famine, and sword based on these verses, okay, that I've given you already. I've given you all these verses. I've taken them all and I've broken them down in this chart. On March 22nd of 25, Egypt is broken by Antichrist, not just by anybody, okay, and that should say something right there, Antichrist. It's not back here. It's during the time he's actually signed the treaty. It's already moving forward, and Egypt's in trouble because they're the king of the south and they're going to be warring against Antichrist till this picture's done. It tells you that. The peoples are cut off from the world, okay? June 21st to 25, famine is so severe that no food is found in Jerusalem. We talked about all these verses. And then what? You have the 17th of Tammuz of 5785, July 13th of 2025, the walls are broken down. Now I've added this date because if the three dates in the past happen, that they happen in the future, that Israel or Jerusalem is sieged on a certain date, the walls are broken in on a certain date, and then the temple is destroyed on a certain date, that they'll happen in the future. And I've shown you all three of these dates I will show you as we move forward all three of these dates because the last date is here when the temple is actually destroyed, which is amazing because it's right after abomination and two witnesses have perished. Oh wow, it's amazing how this chart lines up. I'm just saying, I'm going to be real interested to see what happens in December. December 22nd to me is a huge date. So the walls are broken down. The residue of the people are taken to Babylon based on these verses. July 22nd of 25, Jewish people, 4,600 of them are taken into captivity. That is when Reuben Revlin is removed and captured. He's goes to the plains of Jericho to the north. He's captured. His sons are killed. His eyes are taken out and he's removed. So now you have two kings literally out of commission. Okay. Isaac Herzog is removed and in captivity here when the siege of Jerusalem happens based on these verses up here. And then Reuben Revlin is captured here. And so no leader of Israel exists, and that's why Antichrist has to put a governor in, and he does. But this is a bad ending. Now it doesn't kill Reuben Revlin. It just imprisons him in a horrid condition. And I'm just based off of what the prophecy indicates. In September of 25, the son of Netanyahu, we talked about this. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit so you can see it a little better. The son of Netanyahu, Wow, that is terribly small. Sieges or kills that regional leader assigned by Antichrist. Okay. In November of 26, we see the son of Netanyahu. Now, this one I believe was Abner. And I considered that this one might actually be Yar, because he proclaims a fast before the Lord, and then all of a sudden we see Jerusalem smitten shortly after that. So in November of 2026, he proclaims this fast. I believe that's Yar that does that. Abner would be the one that actually kills the governor as we move forward here. And so he assassinates this governor, and then so both boys might actually affect something here, Yar and Abner, because Abner would assassinate the Antichrist, and Yar would potentially, or one of them could do both. I'm just saying, it looks like one's a military, one's a scholar. I'm just going with that one. He's got two sons, maybe one does one and one does the other. I'm just speculating on that. But anyway, they proclaim this fast on November 26th, and then look at that, December 17th of 26th, Jerusalem and Israel are smitten and utterly destroyed, completely destroyed. Okay, we're working into abomination here. Okay. God places a lamentation against Egypt, so Egypt again is being threatened, and they actually go into complete destruction with the king and all the people being destroyed right before abomination, which happens July 19th to 27. The two witnesses would perish. We have Rosh Hashanah, or the Jewish New Year, that would happen in 27 as we move forward. And it's amazing that on the 9th of Av, which would be August 11th and 12th of 27, we potentially would see a third temple destruction right after abomination. So in the next month, within less than a month after abomination, we potentially would see an additional third temple destruction, which would be the third time in history that this would happen on the very same day. Just as the walls are besieged on the very same day and the walls are broken in on the very same day, the temple could be basically destroyed on the very same day right before rapture. Okay, because he destroys and smittens the whole city. And we see the resurrection of those two witnesses that lay in the streets for 3.5 days right before the Feast of Trumpets, and the Lord would come back on October 2nd. Another thing that goes back to this warning of Jeremiah back in this first portion when they were blowing the shofar, I believe will happen or needs to happen to bring the Lord back, and that is they will have to blow the shofar in the third temple, or on the mount to bring him here. It's destroyed, so they may have to blow the shofar to bring him back, to get him to come through the east gate. And so maybe on the Feast of Trumpets on October 2nd of 2027, during a sabbatical Saturday, they would have to blow the shofar. That would then bring the Lord back through the east gate, and he would then rapture his people from great tribulation, the elect, the saints, and the martyrs. That's my speculation on that. So as all this is happening on the temple, and the temple's being destroyed, and all this is occurring as we get into October and that fall feast, would we literally have to have someone stand on the Temple Mount and blow the shofar to bring the Lord back on this very specific date? This seems like it should be the way it happens, and that we would sound the last trumpet, and he would then come take us away. I'm just throwing that one down. So hopefully this made some sense. There's a lot going on here in this paradigm, okay? And I don't know how all these things can line up without something being here, and it may be just wrong. We're going to find out. December is coming up fast, and we're getting ready to watch a war with Iran and Israel breaking out. If nothing else, that will involve many factions like Hezbollah, Hamas. It'll probably affect the Kurds and Syria and a number of countries over there. But I believe you're going to see an invasion by Turkey, which will then bring in the SEALs War, and that will happen at any moment. Erdogan is getting ready to invade. He's going to go against the Kurds. NATO's not happy with his stance against Sweden. They've had many Koran burnings in Sweden, and I believe that we will see Erdogan leave NATO here before long. And he wants to rebuild his Neo-Ottoman Empire by 23, because it was dissolved in 1923 originally when they were destroyed in World War One. Through World War One, the Ottomans fell. That was the seventh kingdom. That kingdom's never really perished. As we move into the eighth kingdom, or the beast kingdoms, we're going to have to contend with the Ottomans again, because that Ottoman Empire never died, and there is no kingdom between the seventh kingdom and the eighth kingdom based on the annual statute. So look at all this stuff. Is December 22nd a big date? I think. And if it is, and we see a sieging on Jerusalem, this is extremely important date. If you see this December 22nd siege occur, and you actually watch an attack on Israel, then you need to be fairly alert to a potential sixth seal event, which would happen potentially a month or less, 15 days in my calendar or so after that, because if he's the first horseman that comes out and he's destroyed on the sixth seal, then that will happen right after the sieging occurs, and we see that sixth seal event pop. And so you need to start getting ready. If you're not, you have very little time. December is going to catch you really hard. You're going to watch the economy start to collapse as we're going into the third and fourth economic prints of negative GDP. The whole globe's shutting down. The credit lines are shutting down. They're going to put more pain on us by raising the rate. Bitcoin's collapsing. Gold and metals are collapsing this very moment because the dollar strength's eating all the currencies up. You got to realize that you're having a global collapse with all the wars happening out here. Look, I've been saying this for a while. If you're in the birth pains and sorrows, and they started on October 9th, you've already started to break the seal, or the first seal of Revelation, the first seal. He's got the scroll. He's breaking seals. You shouldn't be here after this moment in time, because you're not supposed to be here for any of this. And why are you here in the middle of this? Because this is getting ugly. So I'm just saying, I'm not a pre-rapture guy. I hope you're preparing. If you're not, I'm afraid that you're going to put yourself in a bad place as we move forward, because you haven't done anything to get ready, and you haven't put your oil in your lamp. So I'm pleading to you, get something ready. And even if you're raptured, then you can leave it to the next guy that's left on the ground, and maybe he'll then thank God for having something that he's found that can help him get to the end of this story. So God bless everybody. Keep your eye on this one. This one's going to get crazy. This paradigm matters. I believe it does, because it just seems to line up with all these kings and all these different groups of people, and these three people in general, as we move forward, matter to the paradigm. So keep your eye on these three people: Erdogan of Turkey, and the two leaders, past and present, of Israel, Reuben Rivlin, Isaac Herzog, because I believe they will play a major role in what's coming, especially this man here. He's going to not realize he's going to have to come out of retirement for long and actually deal with a country that is completely broken by this man. So God bless. Find the open door. Find Jesus. Things are getting really intense out here, and as we move into October, you also have a debt ceiling issue at the beginning of the month on October, and Jay Powell's getting ready to raise rates in September. I can't give you a specific date. I believe it's the 20th. So that will change everything. Find the open door, find Jesus, put oil in your lamp, get ready. This is going to be a heck of a ride, and you better get your popcorn ready because this is just starting. God bless. Have a great day.